Good morning on this Sunday, November 3rd, and welcome to the Georgia Gang, the home stretch. Early voting is over, Election Day is 2 days away, and a historic presidential race that has had twists and turns, assassination attempts, and a lot of nasty name-calling. Also, Georgia's Secretary of State tells voters their votes are safe and secure, and he stands ready to defend the results of the election, no matter who wins Georgia. Also, voters in 2 major metro Atlanta counties are deciding the future of transit by voting on a penny sales tax. Melita, Phil, Theron, and Martha are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
Early voting here in Georgia shattered previous records. More than half of all registered voters across the state have already cast ballots. Election officials hope these massive numbers will make things run a little smoother on Tuesday. Both campaigns have seen positive signs in the early voting numbers. Republicans have pointed to heavy turnout in rural areas, especially the northern part of Georgia, which should be strongholds for Donald Trump. They also pointed to some counties with higher numbers of African American voters, such as Bibb, Chatham, and Clayton counties that seem to be underperforming. Democrats counter that women, who polls say favor Vice President Harris, make up nearly 56% of the early vote. Melita, to you first this week. Your thoughts on these numbers and how they're shaking out?
Well, because Republicans shifted strategy by encouraging their voters to vote early, it's very hard to tell what the sheer numbers of the early votes mean, because there are not any exit polls attributed to any of these results. But what we do know is that because of a new state law requiring that early votes be posted by 8 p.m. on Election Day, Georgia will be among the first of the states to have a large chunk of votes out there. And so that will have an impact, more than just the fact that we're a battleground state, on the way voting totals are reported by major networks on election evening.
Okay. Tough to read into these numbers. Nobody knows what's going to happen. But Phil, 56% of that early vote turnout, as I mentioned, women. Does that worry Republicans?
It really shouldn't, because polling also shows that when it comes to the female voter, a majority of married women tend to be conservative and vote Republican, and that's true in Georgia and nationwide. And also the Democrats, though, are hoping to turn out perhaps more single women. Of course, those numbers can vary according to state, according to issue. Sometimes, yes, abortion is an issue. Sometimes crime and public safety is an issue. So just like men, women can shift around. So I'm not that worried about it to analyze it, but I'm looking at the numbers, and when you have all of the GOP congressional districts in the state that are overperforming from 2020 with Trump vote and Republican vote, that's a signal. Now, yes, there still was Friday and Tuesday for early voting, but when you see, like, for example, Congressman Rich McCormick's 7th district, that is a massive vote. It was over 300,000 when Friday morning occurred, and you had 4 or 5 other Republican counties that were overperforming from 2020. So real clear politics, just to kind of finish up here, 5 of the 7 swing states, including Georgia, are already leading for Trump. And again, we have to wait till Tuesday, but that's the 270 votes right there.
Well, Theron, I mean, it looks like Republicans have caught on to that early voting strategy. Does that worry Democrats?
Yeah, because historically, Lori, as you and I've talked about, Republicans in the state of Georgia always sort of turn out on Election Day. And then Ralph Reed with the Christian Coalition, you would always see these absentee ballots that they've been sending out applications to. And those absentees will usually come from rural Republicans. But just to kind of take our viewers, Laura, into sort of what's going on in these campaigns. You know, one of the things I always remember, Martha, you've run for office, is those people who call you those last few days of the campaign. So I've called Republican operatives, I've called Democratic operatives. And here's something that they all point out to me. Right now, as we tape, it's a Friday. We don't really know what the election results were from Thursday, but roughly about 3.6 million people have voted.
The turnout.
The turnout, yeah, or so far, right? But you still got 226,000 absentee ballots that are out there. And so you know who those applicants are. And so you're looking at your district, you're getting those folks out to vote. But the other thing about the African-American vote, right, is being the only African-American on the panel, yes, 26% is not where I want to be. But think about it. You also show that 346,000 people identified themselves as other. And I believe, not all, but a large majority of those folks who went in there did not want to classify their race are African-American voters. And so I think we will get to that 27% number. And then the last thing, Lori, I think that there are so many disaffected Republicans. I can't tell you who've been telling me all week, I'm a Nikki Haley supporter. I've never voted for Trump. I can't vote for him again. I think we're going to be shocked at how many Republicans who are going to the polls early that are not voting for Trump, and how many of them are either going to write someone in or they're going to leave it blank.
Martha, talk about that. What are we going to have a lot of split ticket voters?
You know, I think that Democrats are really hoping that that's the case, because the people that they're talking to are not, you know, are going to tell them that. But what I've noticed is among my group of people, which were a lot of those people that didn't know what they were going to do, is that they were coming home and they're voting for Donald Trump, mainly because of the future. But I think you meant to say 30%, not 27%, getting to 30%.
No, we get a 30% game over. Kamala wins.
So I just, because
with the black vote.
With the black vote,
yes, absolutely. Look, I just think that it's so great that we shifted this structure to where we're getting people out. And I think the two best things that the Trump campaign did is, one, they had professional leadership. They had the best run campaign that they've had, but also the shift of the president talking about getting people out to vote early. Because it is true, the Democrats are the ones that always talk about early voting, get the absentee ballot, and we always talk about going on election day. But we changed that strategy. So again, to Melita's point, we don't really know exactly what that means, but I will also say, I can't wait till 8 o'clock. I'm covering those things, and I am so glad that we're going to have 70% of the vote in. I think at 8 o'clock, we hope it's going to be great.
Melita?
Well, we did have on Thursday night, Cobb County's Elections Board announced that more than 3,000 voters who had requested absentee ballots did not receive them, and they were being mailed with expedited postage and expedited return postage. I would expect that will be one of the first lawsuits filed post-election.
Well, Phil, more than 500,000 early voters did not vote in 2020, according to the AJC and GeorgiaVotes.com. More than 53% are white voters, about 25% are black voters. What do these numbers tell you? It's really hard to figure out who these folks are.
Well, it is, but you remember when Trump and some other Republicans were saying this is terrible, our votes are not counting, that has totally changed, and all the Republicans, like we've all been saying here, vote early, bank your votes. Let's take Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, which is the 14th, 263,000 votes already, I believe it was. She's overperforming in that district, and there's not that many Democrats in that district, so that's just a snapshot of how the Republicans have really been banking the vote in anticipation of a Democrat surge on Election Day.
Darren, what can you tell us? Anything about any insight on these new voters?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that question. So, doing my research this week, we haven't talked about this, but the Latino vote. We know what happened at this Trump rally in New York, where a comedian went out and called the country, the territory, Puerto Rico, garbage. And what I've been hearing from a lot of my Latino brothers and sisters, which a lot of them are newly registered voters, are outraged by this. And I just give my review of some stats. We have 5.8 million Puerto Ricans that live in the U.S. We have 115,000 Puerto Ricans who live in Georgia. And then we also have, you'll like this, Phil, we have over 300,000 Puerto Rican women and men who serve in our military. I'm telling you, I think that this is going to be a surge, not only in Georgia, but you have so many Latino folks who are very upset. And then lastly, I was reminded by—
From a comedian?
No. Well, but you know this, Phil. Anytime you have a rally, and you all know this, you as the candidate can come out and say, I don't agree with what was said. You can condone it, you can push back on it. The fact that Trump has refused to do that himself, not through a statement instead. But the last point I want to make is that this used to be a staple of the Republican Party. They used to talk about Puerto Rican statehood. Newt Gingrich, one of your favorite Republicans, right, talked about how there needs to be a path to statehood. And so I think that the Latino vote is going to be so critical. And I just want to apologize to all of them for being so disrespectful.
You're getting a side eye here from Martha.
Yeah, really quick. No, I think one of those undecided or unnamed are more likely to be Hispanic, because I think that that's really kind of where that number is. But if you're going to bring up the garbage comment,
I knew it was coming.
Do you know what I mean? We got Trump supporters are garbage, and then we've got the Mark Cuban comment, which actually I interviewed him on Thursday, and he walked back his statement. So look, unfortunately the name calling's going on. That's why I'm happy I voted early.
All right, we're going to leave it there. We got lots more to talk about. Coming up, Georgia Secretary of State says he stands at the ready to defend Georgia's election results, no matter the outcome.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Wish I could record these outtakes, folks. Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger says he's ready to defend Georgia's election results no matter the outcome, reassuring voters their votes are safe and secure. Phil, what will it take to make election deniers believe him?
Well, I like to think that there's not so much denying, it's questioning. That's what Trump did, that's what Stacey Abrams did, and I've said consistently on this show that everybody, Democrat, Republican, has a right to question things. Melita and I have agreed, for example, on Coffee County, that there was irregularities there that still need to be investigated. So for Raffensperger, who, by the way, wants to probably run for higher public office, he wants to say, oh, everything's hunky-dory and I'm going to stand by everything. Well, that's fine, but there's going to be problems. You point out, there's going to be lawsuits on both sides, no matter who wins. So I think Raffensperger is trying to put on the best face. I get it, he's Secretary of State, but let's put it in perspective.
Melita.
Well, I agree with Phil about the fact that the Coffee County data breach is a serious matter that neither the FBI, the Attorney General, or the Secretary of State have done anything about in the 3.5 years we've known about that. And it's a serious problem which does give people reason to question. And then when you add something like Cobb County's Elections Board not getting out absentee votes, then there are people who have reasons to ask questions. Now, there are many ways that Raffensperger correctly points out that Georgia votes are secured. The watermarked paper, the checking of ID at the polling stations. So there are many ways that they are securing the vote, but there are also gaping holes you can drive a semi-truck through that have not been addressed by any of the authorities who could have addressed them.
All right, well, there is a national program called the Democracy Defense Project echoing Raffensperger's sentiments. Now, Martha, I was at the Metro Atlanta Chamber this week to help record one of their sessions with former Georgia Governors Nathan Deal and Roy Barnes, also former Senator Saxby Chambliss and Mayor Shirley Franklin, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, with the same message about election integrity and debunking all of this misinformation that's out there.
Well, and you know, I made them a winner several weeks ago when they kicked it off, because I've had most of them on the program talking about this issue. And look, I think it's all about transparency, and I think that's what we've done with Senate Bill 202 and some of the changes that have happened there. We're going to have more transparency than we've ever had. Look, I can't control what happens in Oregon where somebody sets some ballots on fire, and I don't know how they're going to put that, put that back together and know whose ballot that was and whose ballot it wasn't. But all I can control is what happens in Georgia, and I think the transparency is there. I feel secure.
Darren?
Well, I think this type of sort of coalition, we need more of that across the U.S. I mean, the fact that you have these former elected officials coming together and speaking to crowds. I attended the one before the Metro Chamber when there were some tough questions. Mm-hmm. There was some Republicans who were there who pushed back, and Governor Roy Barnes sort of, respectfully pushed back as well. But it was a little bit of push and pull about sort of the intent of this organization. But I think ultimately it's doing great. But if I can quickly echo something that Melita said, I want to compliment Gabe Sterling. Today, this week, you had a young lady who said she went to early vote. It blew up Twitter, it blew up TikTok, and she said she went in and she was actually registered to vote in Bibb County, but it showed up Fulton County. Now she was able to vote, but the point is that because she went and voted early, they found the problem, they fixed it, and Gabe immediately went to the airwaves. And so by voting early, we're able to catch those. What I'm concerned about is on election day, are we going to be able to make sure that we've communicated enough to the public where folks actually know where their precincts are? Do they have the proper identification? Because they scanned the back of your driver's license. But this was a clear case that there are going to be some glitches in the system. And so I do think that we got to be very transparent. I agree with Martha. But I think that the other thing that the Secretary of State's office did a really good job of, and we talked about this last week, this whole nonsense about non-citizen voting and not being registered, I think that was something that gives the Georgia public a little bit more comfort in believing that this election is going to be fair.
Well, and just know that if there are issues with your registration, you can vote provisional, and then you just have to,
Well, and this is why
bring
we
your
have
ID and all of that.
We have poll workers. This is why we have
Right.
poll watchers. If you have a problem, I mean, if it was all paper ballots in the old days, there were problems that you had to bring to somebody's attention. When you've got a bunch of machines or you've got absentee ballots, there's going to be problems. So, you know, that's why the system works so well, is that it's very hard to fix.
Phil.
Let me point out something that we discussed last week, and just to kind of put a fine point on it. Yes, the court said it's too late for the rulemaking to do the ballots that were counted with the actual voters that are counted. Now, that does not mean that all 159 counties should still not do that reconciliation. It's still in the state law. Actually, the state election board was just trying to put another check on that. So you still have to reconcile your votes before the Monday after the election when you have to certify. And even if you're not happy on an election board, you can certify, but then say, no, we're not happy with what happened in this precinct. And if you have to, you can get a judge or go to do a lawsuit.
Or a lawyer. Okay, Melita.
Well, anybody who is listed as inactive can still vote in this election cycle. And then the other thing for our viewers to remember is that if you requested an absentee ballot and you're showing that your absentee ballot has not been received by your county elections board, on your My Voter page, you should go to the polls and request to vote that day. And if you requested an absentee ballot and have not received it, go in, if at all possible, and vote on the day of.
All right, all good information, folks. Thank you. Coming up, voters in Cobb and Gwinnett will notice a 1-cent sales tax for transit on their ballots. We'll discuss next.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
Voters in Cobb, Gwinnett, and Martha tells me Hall County are also deciding a penny sales tax that will raise billions of dollars for transit over the next 30 years. Of note, neither plan includes heavy rail, rather lots of bus rapid transit and an expansion of bus services. Martha.
So in Hall County, ours is more transportation, and the counties in Metro Atlanta are more rail and that kind of thing, but it's all under the same umbrella of T-SPLOST. And what I love about this is very different than what we went through, 12 years ago when we were having these regions we were voting on and nobody really understood how it worked or how people were going to get the money. This is very much straightforward T-SPLOST, where you've got a list of projects, the money they can bring in, and there's transparency, about it. And I don't mind saying I voted yes. I mean, it's the right thing to do. We've got traffic like Atlanta and Hall County, and we need to get around it.
Farron, it's been an uphill climb in Cobb and Gwinnett counties.
It is, but I am very optimistic, Lori, about what I'm hearing, not just from the coalition of folks who are trying to pass transit, but to Martha's point, there's been a over-communicative strategy to be very honest and transparent with the voters about what they're going to get. Look, guys, we can't build just lanes in this region. All of us. It's a bipartisan issue, right? We cannot continue to sit in traffic. And so I'm very optimistic about how the referendum question has been explained to the residents, and the money and the grassroots organizations that have been out here pushing this is definitely the right thing to do. And if we're going to continue to be this growing region in the country and continue to attract all these businesses and try to bring people here for economic development, we got to make sure that we pass these three transit referendums that's going on in the state of Georgia.
Very quickly, I think that Cobb County could be in trouble because they waited a little late. They did not get, we talk about transparency, Martha, they didn't get out what exactly is in there. And I know prominent businessman John Loud became a big opponent, which could tip it.
All right. Well, moving on, in a shocking turn of events, Grammy award-winning rapper Young Thug was released from the Fulton County Jail after he agreed to a plea deal. Judge Paige Reese Whitaker sentenced him to 15 years probation, and he can't be in the Metro Atlanta area for the next 10 years. Phil, over to you, because this was quite a surprise.
This was quite a surprise, and I think a shout out should be given to Superior Court Judge Paige Whitaker. I think she handled this very well. She just took it over, a few months ago and moved it right along. I'm thinking that because of the sentence you just read, Lori, that he's spilling his guts maybe on some other gang members. We've all watched the movies. That's how it works. But I was very interested and chuckled to see that Young Thug's father did an interview on the news Thursday night, and he was wearing a Courtney Kramer for district attorney cap. So maybe Courtney Kramer, the Republican opponent to D.A. Fonnie Willis, is going to cut into the African-American vote there.
There y'all go again. Every time somebody does something, they're all cutting into the African-American vote. Real quick, Lori, look, I think that Jeffrey is his first name, Young Thug. apologized. He took full responsibility for the decision. He had the plea deal. He said, I take full responsibility for the charges, and he also mentioned crimes. This was the longest case in Fulton County history, and it's not over. He still has 2 co-defendants who has to come up and actually face the judge as well. And so look, definitely still a lot of bad things happen, but this man will be able to go back and be with his family. He can't come into Metro Atlanta. I think he's got to come here 4 times a year. He's committed to talking to young people about gang violence and making sure that he doesn't include these violent, divisive lyrics in his rap songs. And so there's a lot that he's committed to, but ultimately he had his day in court, and he's going to be released, and let's see what happens.
It's a second chance for him. Yeah. Well, California is upping its game when it comes to film tax credits. Governor Gavin Newsom took a swipe at Georgia over its film tax credit program and conservative policies. But Governor Kemp fired back, Melita.
He did. It's a back and forth between 2 men who both have potential presidential hopes, and Georgia does not have a ceiling on how much can be spent on those tax credits, where California always has, and that ceiling has cut into the number of productions that choose to stay in California rather than coming to Georgia. And so it's very interesting to see Kemp and Newsom, both of them very telegenic, both of them relatively young, going at each other head to head over these film tax credits as a precursor to the kinds of things they might say on a national stage about other policies.
And the Kemp folks saying, Martha, you know, let's talk about how much a gallon of gas costs in California.
Absolutely, but also, you know, they're just, the accountants control where these productions go. And as long as Georgia is the best bang for the buck, if you will, they're going to keep coming to Georgia, and that's just the bottom line. Every A-list actor could come out and say how horrible we are. They don't make the money decisions, okay? It's the bean counters.
Darren, this is always a fight over these tax credits.
Yeah, but we got to, you know, look at this from a different lens. Look at all the amount of jobs, people who now have new careers, Lori. During COVID and before COVID-19, which is a deadly pandemic, we saw the film industry and other industries come to Georgia because of these tax credits. I think that there's going to be a robust conversation at the legislative session about looking at ways that you can make it better. Yes, you got to have a conversation about equity and making sure that if there is a cap, where does the caps go? But I think that, look, you know, I agree with Melita. I mean, Governor Kemp pushed back, but Gavin Newsom is a rising star in Democratic politics, and he's going to be on the scene for a long time. So I support these incentives, these tax credits, and I think it's going to continue to be good for business.
No, quickly, I know that a lot of people think Gavin Newsom is a rising star, but I think he missed his moment. He's going to be the Howard Baker of this generation.
All right, you heard it here first, I guess. Phil.
Well, I think there is going to be a debate on whether we do cap things. I know California, they raised their cap to the tax credit cap to $750 million. I think other state legislators are also going to get into this battle too. So as for our conservative economic policies, yeah, we are the #1 state in which to do business. Who the heck is he to talk about when his state has got portions of it swamped with illegal immigrants and they're bankrupt? So I have to laugh at Newsom.
All right, we'll leave it there, folks. Coming up, winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
All right, Martha, we'll start with you.
Winner this week, Georgia Access. They had a big event on Friday at Liberty Plaza where Commissioner King and Ben Watson were there. Also, folks from the Atlanta Dream. It's a great kickoff for people to be able to get insurance in Georgia. So they're a winner this week. My loser this week is Mark Cuban, but he's a winner because he gave me a great interview, and I love that. And then I met a guy named Ali, who is the #1 salesperson for Zero Res, and he and I had a great political conversation. He's a big fan of the show, so thank you.
Nice. We love to hear that. Darren?
All right, my first winner is going to be the Atlanta Region Commission. Anna Roach is the executive director there. They had a packed house at the Georgia World Congress Center. Matt Ryan, the former quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, was the speaker. And so shout out to them. They talked about all these great things that are going on in our region. And also I want to give a huge shout out to Charles Sanders. And for those of us who go to the airport a lot, I feel like it's my second home. He was 85 years old, passed away, has been a shoe shine man there for a very long time. So condolences to his family. And then lastly, we saw the story this week about the DeKalb County school district taking, kids to encouraging people to go and vote. We saw AUC students actually marching to the polls together. Just reminded me when I was at Clarkland University, we would have these marches and would encourage people to unite and go to vote. So shout out to the AUC and shout out to the DeKalb County School District.
Great. Phil.
I'm going to make winners, even though the election hadn't occurred yet. The three candidates who are opposing the district attorneys in Chatham County and in Fulton County and in Athens-Clarke County, because these DAs have practiced lawfare. They, especially in Clarke County, the DA refused to go for the death penalty for Laken Riley's killer. I think that's terrible. That is deserving of the death penalty. And my friend Courtney Kramer, who I mentioned, good luck to her. I think she's a winner no matter what.
All right, Melita.
Well, this is a new book about Jimmy Carter, Rivers and Dreams. It's a wonderful reminiscence about fishing trips with former President Carter, and it's published by the Bitter Southerner. They had a great event at the Carter Library on Wednesday evening. And then my losers are political campaign sign thieves from both political parties. It seems that those frustrated by disappearing signs have upped their game. It's no longer just Vaseline and glitter and hot sauce. They're now attaching GPS devices to find their stolen signs, and that can lead to criminal charges. So stay safe out there.
All right. Sounds good. If you need a break from all this divisiveness over the election, you should head to Roswell this afternoon at 4 p.m. for an event called Hope for Our Country. The nonprofit Sunshine on a Rainy Day, which I'm involved in, is hosting the non-denominational event to bring all beliefs and all views together with hope, faith, and community. Fox 5's David Chanley will be one of the featured speakers, so we encourage you to go. And also, don't forget to vote, and don't forget about all those down ballot races. We'll see you next week, everyone. Bye-bye.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.